Hello, my name is Ian Cunningham, founding partner of Action Career Services and the Corporate Healing Support Group. Welcome to In Transition, the podcast. When we get corporately restructured, we end up in limbo, or a place that we call being in transition. It's a place where we have to make some important decisions, the results of which sometimes are subtle, sometimes are profound. That brings us to our guest, Shawn Lavigne. Of all the people we've managed to help through corporate healing, Shawn's changes have been profound. I invite you now to listen to his story, take notes, and enjoy what he has to say about being in transition. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Shawn.
Hey, Ian. Hi, Shawn. How's it going?
I'm very well, guys. How are you?
We're excellent.
Terrific.
Thank you for joining us on In Transition, our podcast. Stephen Edwards is my co-host, co-founder of Corporate Healing, and a big part of In Transition. And, I'm not going to hide any facts here. Shawn Lavigne, we go back, way back. We've worked together in broadcasting for decades, on and off together at stations as well as away. But I wanted to bring Shawn on In Transition because I think he highlights what being in transition and how to succeed in the best manner of a lot of people that we've talked to and helped in corporate healing. So Shawn, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being open and willing to share your story, because it is an incredible story in my opinion. And I'd like to start first with talking about really your first test of being in transition, and that was a life-altering, possibly ending accident in your early life.
Well, it was in 1990, and I had just graduated college, and I was just starting my first real job in broadcasting in the radio business, and I was involved in a head-on collision a mile away from my home, and it almost cost me my life. When you say life-altering, it certainly was, from the standpoint. It was the worst day of my life, but also maybe one of the best days of my life, where it set me on a new course, a new path, a new journey after a 25 to 30-year broadcasting career, and now transitioning to a place where I've always wanted to live, it's been, as you say, an incredible journey, and one of personal growth. And there's been a lot of obstacles, there's no doubt about it, Ian, but overall it started with that accident and just dealing with adversity, and just learning about myself and what I could do to overcome those obstacles. Just to quickly give you a Reader's Digest of my injuries, I actually had a torn aorta, and the statistics just to survive that, to get through that is very slim. And then there was the possibility of paralysis. I was very fortunate I did not have a head injury, but there was paralysis potential. And once I got through that, the initial surgery, where the doctors at the Ottawa General did an amazing job to save my life. Now we're talking, I had the possibility of losing my right leg, that I had an infection, a terrible infection in my leg. And that was all over the course of 2 to 3 weeks that I was dealing with all of that. Morphine does wonders, though, because I don't remember much of that period. But reading my mom's journal about that period, of what was going on around me, I was not aware what was happening around me. But then to read it months later was just an incredible eye-opening experience for me. And really that sort of set me on the path of recovery. And, what am I going to do next in my life? I just started my career. Where's that going to take me? And it also really taught me not to take things for granted. I had to learn to walk again. I broke both my legs. And I had to learn how to walk again. But I was very fortunate. I healed very quickly for the injuries I suffered. I also shattered an arm. I lost part of a lung. I don't have a spleen. I don't have a gallbladder. So, and as I always joke with people, everybody's parts are, set in a specific spot. Mine are all over the place, and yet it still works. So, I've been very fortunate and blessed. It's been 30 years since the car accident, and to live the life I've led, to be able to do what I've been able to do physically, has been a real miracle. It really has. And I don't take that for granted.
Now, Shawn, you hit a rock bottom place while you were recovering. Um,
Oh, absolutely. And when you recover from something like that, there's sort of survivor's guilt in a way. In my recovery with the accident and learning to walk again, I was surrounded in the rehabilitation center in Ottawa with quadriplegics, paraplegics, diabetics who have lost limbs. If that doesn't give you motivation and just the realization of how lucky you are, because I'm going to walk out of that place where these people may not, and I will have a quality of life that these people won't. It was a real, I wouldn't say shock to the system, but I was totally aware of it during my rehab and my recovery. It was a motivating factor, but I also felt a lot of sadness for a lot of these people that I got to learn, got to know on a daily basis. I saw their struggles, and the amount of positivity they had, and they were in far worse shape than I was.
So actually, Shawn, and that actually leads me to a question I was going to ask, just around to come back from something like that, and obviously, all our lives are better for the fact that that you did. But talk about the resilience, how you developed the resilience to work through, to work back from that place. The rehab, the self doubts. Talk to us how you overcame that.
I was just blessed to have a lot of family, a lot of friends. I constantly had visitors to keep my spirits up. My mom was at my bedside for 6 weeks. That I can never thank her enough for what, just having her there, and just the support. Like, I would always hear from people through friends who would come to visit. And this was, again, I had just got out of college. Like, even some of my college professors made the drive from Toronto just to come and see me for a weekend. When you have that support, and people care about you that much, you will never forget it for the rest of your life. And I never have. I had a mentor, Big John Small, who really, if it wasn't for John, I wouldn't have the broadcasting career I did. But I also don't think I would have had the recovery that I had. He was an amazing individual. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he really saw something in me that I never saw. And, his motivation and his positivity, and he kicked me in the butt a few times as well. When I had my pity party, I also had some amazing nurses who, I will never forget this. Thanksgiving of 1990, my family had a potluck supper for me at the rehab center. It was such an amazing day or evening. And all my aunts and uncles came, and we had a boardroom, and we had a wonderful meal. But I was very sad, because they had all left, and here I am alone again. And I had a nurse. Her name was Tony, and she came in and literally just kicked my ass. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. If it's all up to you. If you want to leave by Christmas, that's up to you. If you want to, get going with your rehab program, that's up to you. And it was just a little thing. It wasn't even like, it was just getting out of bed and walking down the hallway with a walker, or sorry, in a wheelchair to begin with, but then in a walker, just to have breakfast in a different part of the rehab center just to get me moving in the morning and get my headspace going in the right direction to get my day off right. Just those little things, and I was stubborn, and I was, like I said, I had a bit of a pity party going, and it was scary. Like, it was scary to learn how to walk again and to become normal again. It's hard to explain unless you've been through it. But that's what it was like. And it's funny, that next day, I just went on this trajectory that just went within, 6 weeks. I walked pretty much out of the rehab center. I was 2 weeks before Christmas, and nobody ever thought that would happen. And now I had a long rehab stint after that, but the fact I could go home for Christmas was a miracle in itself.
And I mean, it's such an incredible story. And how does something like that change your life mentally? So the physical, obviously, you go through the physical rehab. You've talked about learning to walk, but how does that change your life mentally?
Okay, there's a good side and there's a bad side. The bad side was I had a bit of a God complex that if I could survive this, I could survive anything. The good side, if I could survive this, I can survive anything. if you understand, like, because physical wise, and I didn't really take care of my body as well as I should have after, because I thought I was sort of a bit of invincibility. But in terms of dealing with bad stuff, in dealing with obstacles in life, I have said this over and over and over again. If it wasn't for that accident, maybe I wouldn't be as strong as what I am. The greatest compliment I get from people to this day is that I've never known anybody who can deal with adversity like you can and just smile about it. And I've heard that from coworkers, I've heard that from family, I've heard that from friends, that they cannot, when I start telling them what I've been through, they are just blown away that A, I can be as positive as I am, B, that I actually, didn't crumble under some of this pressure and under this adversity, and just the positive nature of my personality. There's two ways you can go. You could be miserable for the rest of your life, and I could have easily gone down that path too, but I chose not to. And again, I always go back. The family I have, the friends I have, got me through the toughest times in my life to this very day, because I've had a lot of obstacles. We all have in life. But there are two paths you can choose. You can be negative all the time and woe is me, or you can, what? I think a lot of people don't realize how strong they really are mentally until you face some adversity. I've seen it. I've seen friends of mine who, on the outside may be fragile, but when they have to deal with adversity and when it slaps you right in the face, they take it on full bore, and they've had a different life perspective and life change.
Shawn, that's an incredible, in transition setup, to have that in your life and to live through and grow from that experience. And thank you for sharing it. Now it's decades since something traumatic happened to you. Not in the physical damaging, but the mental effects of dealing with job loss, dealing with having to change careers, dealing with success and not having success anymore. And I believe it's twice that you've been restructured. And I'd like to know the differences between the two times that you have been restructured and how you dealt with that.
Well, the first time happened in 2002, and I had just actually left a really great job with the Score television network. I was a day oneer there and really had a great job and really enjoyed it. but my passion was always radio, and I had this great opportunity to go to the Team Radio Network. Some people may remember it, some people may not, but to be a sports director at 32 was a dream come true for me. And it was an opportunity I just felt at that time in my life I couldn't pass up. And it's funny, as we all, Ian, you know this, when we started in the business and we made $8 an hour, and then, when you can rise and get to a certain financial status where you're like, I never thought this would ever happen, especially as quickly as it did with me. I felt very lucky, and I felt like I couldn't turn this opportunity down. In hindsight, was it a good decision? Maybe not. Maybe I didn't do my research, but I trusted the people I worked with. I had worked with them before, and I loved them all, working with them. And I will never regret the move I made, because actually it was another opportunity to learn. And when I lost my job, it's almost like death. And I mean this in the sense of, there's a mourning period, and some people are really good at mourning period and get closure and move on. And then there are people that, will linger and harbor, bad feelings, and they just can't get over it. I felt like I didn't the first time mourn enough. I sort of jumped right back into the fire. I was very lucky. I had an opportunity. Again, I at the time it made sense to do it, but I wasn't ready, and it ate me alive. It was not a fun place to work at. I'm not even going to say where it was, but it just was a very difficult environment to walk into. I knew right away this was not going to work for me, and I actually quit because it wasn't right for me. And I just was not ready to go down that road. I paid for it, financially. I was out of work for another year and a half, lucky to get some contracts, and I was able to piecemeal my way through for a year and a half until, fortunately, XM Radio was born, satellite radio in Canada, and I got in, a day oneer there, and then had a great career up until March of 2019. And Ian and I, we were let go essentially 5 days apart. I sort of had a feeling that one was coming, just the way the structure was going at Bell Media. I knew my time was near. And I always said when I started in 2011, if I can make it to 50 at Bell at TSN Radio, I had a great run. Well, I was 2 weeks short of 50 years old. So, I be careful what I wish for, I guess. I don't know. But
you put it out in the universe, man. It happens.
I did, man. I did. It was true. But I, at that time though, Ian, and I know you and I, we talked, and we'll get into it more about our relationship after that. But I told myself, I am going to take a break. I was mentally burnt out anyways. I needed to hit the reset button. I just needed to get away from sports radio. I needed to get away from radio, to be quite honest, which I did. I just needed a break. I was in it for so long, and when it's also your hobby, it was difficult, but it wasn't as difficult as the first time. The first time I found it very challenging. The second time, not as much. Actually, it was funny. In my exit interview, the day I was let go, the HR person, she said, "You are like the most calm person I have had to deal with ever." And I said, "Well, I've been through it once before," and I felt like I was actually being her shrink at the end of the conversation. It was just weird.
Shawn, I can't believe you're saying that, because it's the exact same thing that happened to me when they let me go.
Right.
Because it was the second time for me, and she's like, "You're so calm, you're making me feel bad."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like she's expecting tears, and she's expecting, anger, and and it's like, well, it's not your fault. Like,
well, you have to understand, having been on that side of it as well, you have to understand that when you go into that type of conversation, you go in and you sort of steel yourself for that to actually happen, and it does happen.
Right.
Quite frequently.
Absolutely.
But when it happened to me, on this side of it, being on the receiving end, I had something similar said to me, and it was like I was almost supposed to be impressed. It was. I didn't know whether to take it as a compliment, or it's a very strange thing. It really is. It really is. And
well, I try to put myself into their shoes.
Yeah,
like, they're just doing their job, and
exactly.
And let's be honest, it is a thankless job.
Oh,
that
it's
they
horrible.
Have to do.
It's horrible.
So and again, it was one of those situations where I wasn't angry at my boss. I wasn't it was like it was inevitable it was going to happen. I could see the lay of the land of where everything was going. I had a great run, and then I was like, I was burned out anyways. Like I was done for a while. Like I didn't listen to any talk radio for about 3 months after, and I was okay with that, and it worked out just fine. So yeah, it was like I said, the two situations, I got immediate sort of closure the second time. And it was a great life lesson. Like I learned a lot from the first time that I sure wasn't going to make the same mistakes the second time.
So Shawn, what my question for you is are there parallels from that first time you went through job loss, and even the second time, to some of the resilience and so on, and that you had to develop when you were going through your rehab from the early 90s there?
Yeah, so after I lost my job in March of 2019, I took 3 months off, and I sort of just I didn't think about job. I didn't think about I was just decompressing. Like I was just getting back, just getting my life back, really, which was odd because I was always in that mindset of 24/7. I was a producer, so your mind's always going, oh, the next show, the next day, the next interview booking. I didn't have to worry about any of that. So I actually just enjoyed the downtime. Then you had to start looking ahead. What are you going to do next? Are you going to stay in broadcasting? I still had a passion. I was still good at what I did. I take pride in my work. I always did. I know I was well liked in the broadcast community, but it's a changing landscape. It was getting younger. Ian and I were senior citizens in broadcasting. We really are. And, at 50 years old, that's a tough pill to swallow. But I will say this, and this is, anybody that loves sports, I was that aging veteran at the end of his career, and the sport essentially said, okay, you're done. I tried to get opportunities. I had a couple of token calls, as I like to call it, with some program directors who essentially were trying to pump me for information more about where I just came from, which I thought was a little shallow, and I was like, they had no interest in me. So why would I have an interest in them? So it got to the point, Stephen, where I just went, okay, I think this is a sign. It's a sign that I really need to start opening my mind up to other things, which scared me to death because I had only known one thing in my life, and that's producing radio or just working in the radio business. That was where it got scary. And Ian and I would talk regularly about, where do you see yourself? I was never a long-range thinker. Never have been. And that's one thing actually from my accident. I was always the one day at a time type of individual, because it always seemed like if I made a 5-year plan, it would be crushed after a year. something would just completely derail it. So I was sort of getting sick of the 5-year plans. But yeah, no, Ian actually, was a huge help with sort of cultivating where eventually I would end up, just through our conversations. And he was trying to be, doing some life coaching, and really sort of dug into areas that they were on the surface, but I never really dug deep about how much I wanted it, or where did I really see myself going. And he really cultivated the seeds, to be quite honest, of where I ended up. I've gone through so much. We all have different life stories, and I've gone through divorce, I've gone through relationships, I've had my heart broken, we've had, there's been so many other obstacles in that period as well. That after the 3 months and started to talk to Ian more and more and start to get some of this stuff out, then I started to realize, I'm like, you know what? And I'm the world's worst procrastinator when it comes to myself. I will go to the wall for anybody else, like my best friends and whatnot, but for myself, I'm always the last to look. I look after myself last.
Mm-hmm.
I realized I had to start changing that philosophy a little bit. I had to put a lot of things to bed. I had to, take care of everything, sort of clean the slate. And that's actually what Ian really helped me sort of determine. It's like, you know what, before you can go to the next step, you need to wipe this other stuff out, and start with a fresh new canvas. And I think one of the questions I remember Ian asked is, paint your canvas. Like, what do you see? And it's funny because at that time, all I could think about was Halifax and the ocean and, water and just tranquility. And that's sort of how the seeds got planted. It took a while to get there, but that really is where it started, was in the summer of 2019. And, and here I am.
So if I know Ian, and again, it's such a compelling story. If I know Ian, what you're describing there would be acceptance and forgiveness. So I think there is an element certainly of when you go through job loss, of accepting what's happened, regardless of whose fault, or whatever the politics or whatever the lead up that got you to that position. I think there is an element of, you need to find acceptance before you can move on, and that element just around just understanding where you see yourself is a great way to transition away from the anger and the frustration and the disbelief and all of that into what the possibilities may be, and just starting to build that foundation.
Well, I will tell you, Stephen, the first thing I vowed to do in the summer of 2019 was have breakfast with my ex-program director, who had to make the difficult decision. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted him to know that I wasn't resentful of him. He was, it's not his fault. He was asked to make some difficult decisions, and I was one of those difficult decisions. Mm-hmm. And he always treated me, well, and we had a good relationship. And I just wanted him to know that, I harbor no ill will, because I don't. I loved where I worked. I loved the people I worked with. Mm-hmm. We're not all going to be buddy, but on the flip side, I don't want to burn bridges. I've never burned bridges wherever I've gone. That is something I learned very early in my career, because ironically, I was hired back through the Chum family and with Bell Media and all that. And mm-hmm. some of the same people were still there. So, you just never know in life, where your paths are going to lead and who you're going to, you may come back around to someone. So why burn that bridge?
Well, and as we started off this conversation today, clearly from your accident in 1990, life's too short. And I think there's a perspective there around life being too short to hold grudges and those kind of things. And again, I know for me personally, it was healthy for me just to, as I said, accept and move past all of the stuff and just focus on whatever was coming next. And I think for me, it was once I realized that you can take what you've done over X period of time and you can shape it to this, or you can shape it to that. And, because I'm a career banker, I'm a career financial services professional. and I'm not sure why I'm putting air quotes around professional. I am, but you know, and it took me a while to figure out that I could take that skill set and apply it to pretty much almost anything else. So I think there's a lot of you're in a great situation today. So talk about corporate healing became a part of your life. Talk about how corporate healing helped move you towards the situation you're in today, or did it?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I said, when Ian was doing started the life coaching in 2019, and we had some serious conversations, and I let out a lot of stuff that I hadn't talked about in a long time, if ever.
Mm.
But and I told him, I said, maybe I needed that. Maybe I just needed to get it off my chest. It's and then he started talking to me about corporate healing and his ideas and working with you and what you guys were thinking of. And I said, that would be brilliant. Because after going through it twice, corporate restructuring, there really, I'm not going to say that, there isn't outlets there for people, because there are, but the way I was, Ian told me of how he wanted to see it, where it was sort of bringing together these professionals, and sort of we grieve together, or we share our stories together, I think is so vital and important, because you're not alone. And let's be honest, job loss, it does affect you mentally. And I don't want to come across like everything has been perfect. I am the perfect person to handle anything. That's not the case. I had some really bad days. I had, the lowest point was, I believe it was the end of September of 2019. And it was funny because as I was saying, I was reconnecting with all the people that I worked with at TSN Radio, and I started reconnecting with people that I'd worked with in the business, just personal friends. And then they all went back to work in September, and I was like, the phone wasn't ringing. I still was in transition of where I wanted to take my life, in terms of jobs, and it was daunting, and it was scary, and I literally sat in the dark for 5 days in my condo in Oshawa. And if it wasn't for a party that I had to go to on the Friday night, I don't know, maybe I would have gone 7 days. I don't know. But then it was funny because when I went to the party, I was like the rock star. I was like Norm from Cheers. I walk in and everybody's like, Shaw. And then you realize it's like, what are you doing? You're loved. You got people here who care about you, that will do anything for you, and it really snapped me out of this malaise that I was in. And then I remember telling Ian about it, and he really helped me sort of refocus of, okay, what are you going to do now? Like, what do you stop the pity party? Let's go. And I have never had, I may have the odd bad day since then, but nothing like what that was. That scared me, actually, because I had never, I'd always heard of other people going through that, but I had never been through that.
Right.
Even when I was going through my hospital pity parties, there was always people around to visit. It wasn't like I was alone. This was the first time I felt alone in a long time, like maybe in my life. So yeah, it was that was sort of the reset right there. And since that time, I haven't looked back. I've had a lot of things that haven't worked out, but and we'll get into the stuff that has. But that was my lowest point. And as they all say, sometimes you got to hit rock bottom until you can rise yourself back up. So that was my rock bottom.
And I wanted to ask you, in our corporate healing sessions, the group sessions, you've been very pivotal, actually, Shawn, and I thank you for that, because you're willing to share your story and you're willing to talk, and you're not afraid of what you're feeling at the time. I'd love your observations on what the changes you've seen in people while the group sessions are happening.
I think the biggest one is I think a lot of them realize they aren't the only ones. They aren't the only ones struggling. They aren't the only ones not getting that interview. They're not the only ones that have applied to 150 jobs and they haven't got a call back. I think that has been therapy for a lot of people from the standpoint of that they feel comfortable, that they can open up. I'm an extrovert, so I will spew out what I'm feeling for the most part. And for some people, it's difficult. Some people aren't like that. But from where I, join the meetings to where I see them now, I see a huge change. I've actually, I know I've had some one-on-one conversations with some of the people in the group who feel comfortable, and that makes me feel good because if I can impact them with my story and then give them some ideas and tips of how I got through the tough times, that makes me feel good. I love helping people. And that's why I love corporate healing, because it helps people. It's not easy losing a job at 50 years old. It isn't. Especially, Stephen, you're a professional banker. Ian and I are professional broadcasters. It's something that's been in our blood and our DNA for so long. Now, oh my God, now we may have to pivot. And, that's a whole new scary situation. And I also feel, too, that there's so many of these, the messaging out there, too. And we'll get into some of that a little later of what I've learned now that I have transitioned. But just, it's there is life after job loss, and I'm not talking a job after. There's life. I think we get so wrapped up in our job life that we forget about living sometimes. And what do we actually really want to see our home life to be like? Our physical exercise life, like our health life. Like if there is one thing I've learned so much on this one, it has just been just looking at the whole big picture. I always keep going back to the canvas, but it's so true. It's like, how do you want to see your life moving forward? We only have, let's be honest, if we're lucky, 15 years left or 20 years left if we're able to retire. Some people may not be able to retire. I could be on Freedom 85 for all I know. I don't know. But
that's my plan.
But I'm not even worried about that. I don't worry about that anymore. I used to. I don't worry about that. I just want to live today. I want to look forward to tomorrow. What's the rest of this week look like? I try not to do that. Some people can't live like that. They want to plan years ahead. I'm not that person. But I just really have learned to appreciate. So what have I learned from my accident to where it's got me today?
Mm-hmm.
Do what makes you happy. I love music. Music gets me through my day. I listen to it all the time. It makes me happy, puts a smile on my face. Just appreciate the little small victories. I say that to a lot of people and they just look at me like, what are you talking about? I said, trust me, man. One small victory could lead to a large one. Like it just makes you feel good. One small victory, whether it's a good deed, whether it's maybe you did get an interview, maybe you did get a call back from a place of employment. Just these little things. I always say that you may not get the job, but at least they liked your resume. That's a good start.
Let me just stop you there for a second, because I think it's a really important point to highlight for people who haven't been through job loss. You get used to no a lot.
Yes.
And it's whether it's your resume doesn't get looked at, whether it's you're not getting the calls back, as you said, whether it's, you're trying to book people for networking conversations. There's a lot of no. And so it is really important that when you get something positive and you get something on the other side of the ledger, that you do celebrate. And that's, I'm glad that you brought that up as a point, because I think it's something that we don't tend to in our, I was going to say in our normal lives, but in our pre-transition lives, you don't look at those small wins because you're focused on bigger things. But you have to start small, and you have to start to walk before you can run, and so on.
Well, as an example, after I moved to Halifax, I was still just looking for work, and I got lucky because I found a posting on LinkedIn for the census. And, I just happened to know somebody who worked with Statistics Canada, and I sent him a quick note and I said, look, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm now in Halifax and I'm just curious. And he's like, apply, like, do it now. Like, we're hiring a ton of people. He said, it's only a contract, but he said, it's a start. And he was right. Like, it's a start. Am I set for life? No, I'm not set for life. But it was a start. It was a foot in the door. It was an opportunity that I'll be honest, for almost a year, I did some online teaching, which I loved. It was part-time, and unfortunately it would not have worked, and COVID's a whole other issue. There was a lot of obstacles just in that last year that I'm like, you know what? Why not? Why not do this? Now, if you talk to Shawn Lavigne a year and a half before, he may not have gone for that opportunity.
Yeah.
But now it's like, what do I have to lose? And that's sort of been my motto now. And we haven't even talked about how I even got here to Halifax, but that's really been my motto. It's like, what do you have to lose? Okay, maybe I didn't get the job. I did get the job, and it was a 6-month contract, and now it's led to a bunch of other opportunities that I never would have even thought of doing. And it's been this incredible journey just the last 6 months alone of, giving me the confidence again. And that's one thing, we haven't even talked about that. When you lose a job, you lose confidence. And I lost the confidence.
Absolutely.
And I regained it. And that's the beautiful thing. That was a huge victory for me, was to get that confidence that I can do something else with my skill set that I never thought I would even remotely dream of. And I work with great people, and it's been a real pleasure and just an eye-opening experience from that standpoint of, wow, I was my knees were knocking about 8 months ago, and now it's like I can take on the world. Like I have a confidence now where I can apply to different jobs. And so what if they say no? You know what? I feel confident that I bet you I'll get a call back. That's what I'm thinking these days.
And it's such a powerful thing. I think all three of us are in contract situations, but you don't think about that while you're actually doing the job, because you got a job to do. Right. But you're right. I think your demeanor changes. Your demeanor changes physically. Your demeanor changes mentally. How you approach a job application changes, because I think you're more relaxed. If I can put it that way, it's not a very good way to put it, but you are more relaxed. And to your point, your outlook in terms of whether you get the job or not changes. You are less focused on, oh God, I hope they like me. And it's, hey, if they like me, they do. If they don't, what's next? So I think it's another great point that you raised, just in terms of that confidence level, your perspective, and I've heard people through my journey talk to me about contract work, with derision, and it always sort of made me laugh. And I wasn't really that big, because I'd been used to being a full timer for 20 odd years. But you've got to start somewhere, and somebody's going to show the confidence in you, albeit, it's a bit of risk management on both sides. You get to try them out, they get to try you out.
Yes. And that's a perfect, I was just going to follow up with that, Stephen, because you're absolutely right. especially when you're in a transition. You may not like what this
Mhm.
next deal is. And that's the other thing. I've turned down a couple of job opportunities because it just didn't feel right.
Right.
I did a lot of research. That's one thing I always do when I'm looking for work. I research companies. I talk to people that work for those companies.
Hmm.
Is it a good fit for me? Because I worked I told you my situation.
Yeah.
I rushed into a situation. I didn't research it, didn't really talk to a lot of people, and I regretted it right away. I knew I was in trouble day one, and it wasn't going to work, and it didn't. I was not going to do that again. I wanted to make sure that all my ducks were in a row, and I got the proper information before I made my decision. So I agree with you totally. I actually love the contracts. I really do, because it gives you options. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
Now, the scary side of it is, well, what if you don't have anything after this next contract? Well, I'll be honest. Again, I have the confidence that, well, I've been unemployed. I've had to, go on EI.
Hmm.
It's not the taboo that everybody makes it. It's a
Yeah.
service that is there that I paid into for a long time.
That's right.
Now, now it's going to help me get to the next step in my journey. My next, and this, again, there are so many stigmas out there, and I've heard them all, especially in this role that I'm in, that I realize how many stigmas there are right now out there about job loss, and it does upset me because I know a lot of talented people that unfortunately haven't had, been lucky like me right now,
Hmm.
lucky like you, lucky like Ian, to find something. Um, but you know what? It's not. Don't look at them like they're idiots or they're losers or anything. The stigmas that are out there, I
Hmm.
think it's ridiculous what I've heard. And unfortunately, social media has been a big part of that stigma, and I hate it. I really do.
It is, and it's I mean, for me going on EI, I remember Ian and I talked about this, and probably you and I as well, Sean. That it seemed like I'd failed, and that was almost it was almost like that was my rock bottom. Is, oh my God, I'm on EI, you know. But the day that it happened, the sun came up. I think it actually rained that day, to be honest with you. But the sun came up, and I was still able to feed my kids. I was still able to pay my bills. I had to change some things, obviously. Your lifestyle does change a little bit, but life went on. Um, but what it did for me is it really helped me to say, well, look, you can't stay here. There are limits to this, and I think it was just additional motivation to push harder in the networking. And for me, it was networking. It wasn't about filling out applications. It was about talking to people, talking to you guys, talking to people in my industry, talking to people outside of my industry, and just to get a sense of what might be possible, as you'd mentioned earlier.
Now, Shawn, you referenced that you've had this journey getting out to Halifax. How did the idea of getting there and how did you get there start?
Well, as I said, you and we had those conversations in the summer of 2019, and we said, like, that's your destination. I came to Halifax for the first time 5 years ago. I was in a relationship, and we made our way here, and I fell in love with. I'd always been told Jim Taddy, who I worked with for many years,
Yes, guy.
he one of his first career stops was Halifax, and he talked about Halifax all the time. He said, Shawnee, if you ever had the chance to live in Halifax, go for it. And about 2 years ago, so it would have been the summer of 2019, I came out. My best friend had just moved out of here. He's originally from Cape Breton and transplanted back here. And so we were sitting and I have no job. I'm not attached to anybody. I if there's an opportunity, I'm looking into it. And he's like, great. He's like, you can stay with us. I was like, okay. Well, and then I had a medical situation, another setback, another obstacle. Um, I have my platelets are high, so I have a form of leukemia that's treatable. I never let it bother me, but it was a consideration I had to make for the medical reasons at that time. So I couldn't really get out. And then, of course, COVID hit. so last March, when everything blew up in Canada and Toronto area, my family said, just come home. You can stay at the family farm. My grandparents, who are both gone, I could stay in the farmhouse and just ride out the situation. Because at that time, of course, we all thought, in a month we'll be back to normal, Well, a month turned into 6 months. So in August, so it's almost been a year. My buddy called and he said, Shawn, he's like, I got this opportunity. And I said, okay. And he said, why don't you come and work with me? I said, okay. Now he was in lighting, and I said, Rob, I said, it's not really my jam, man. It's just not. It's just not. Lighting. I never thought of me as I can't even screw in a light bulb, let alone describe which different kinds there are. But at the time, I literally, and I do say this, Stephen, I actually thought, I was like, I gave it about 2 seconds. What the F do I have to lose? Mm-hmm. I got nothing to lose. I could come out here, see what it's like, see if I like it. If I don't like it, I can go back to Ontario. I had options. And this has now become the story of my life, or options. But it was, and thanks to Rob and his wife, and they've been so wonderful in helping me out. So they said, just come and live with us, get settled. If you can find a job, and give it a year, see what it's like. So that was So I moved in September of last year, and of course the second wave just started to hit Ontario, and it was like, wow, I got lucky.
You dodged a bullet, yeah.
I really did. Everything just. It just lined up. And so once quarantine ended, then I just went on this exploration journey where I was just driving by the ocean all the time, and I was going to these places. I just jump in the car and drive. I had no destination planned. I just did my thing. And
you've got to plug Peggy's Cove here. You've got to give Peggy's Cove a plug.
Okay, so I only live 20 minutes from Peggy's Cove. So Peggy and I have this close personal relationship.
And so do I now.
And of course, I'm posting all the pictures now for my mother because, I have to see where you're going. And I'm like, yes, Mom. And Mom's gonna kill me for that impersonation, but she's like, oh, your pictures are lovely. Oh, well, I'm there every second week, and I'm waiting for all my friends just to unfriend me from Facebook. But to be quite honest, the reaction has been completely the opposite. But no, it was cool. It was just building relationships, because I had, other than Rob and Penny, I have no friends here. So this was a whole new thing too. And I love pickleball. Look it up, folks. But so I just showed up I found out that 5 minutes away there's a pickleball court. I showed up one Monday. I said, hey, I'm from Ontario, can I play? And I've been playing with them ever since. So it's Fantastic. Just been, and they've been wonderful friends, and they've been so good to me. And it's just been one thing after another, where it's we talk about karma, and just everything I had hoped that would happen here has happened. Did I make sacrifices? Yes. I left my family who I love. I left my friends who I love. But they were very happy for me, and it makes me feel good whenever I talk to them and they said, man, I have never seen you smile so much, and I've never seen you look so happy and content. And that's really what I've become, is content with my life and my life choices. I was in control. Where it felt like for many years I wasn't in control, or I felt like I wasn't in control. But I think that period where I was able to really clean the slate, and as Ian said, paint that canvas. Where do you see your life? Um, this is where it's led me. It's led me to where I've wanted to be now for many years, and I've made it happen. Um, and as I said, if it wasn't for the friends I have and the people who surround me, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't even be alive. Going back to the accident. So I thank my lucky stars every day. I really do.
Now let's talk about some tactical things now. Things that could really help people who, we love the emotional support. We need the emotional support. But you've 2 years transition into a position now. What are the things that you believe, on top of having the right mental attitude, that can help that resume get read, can help that interview be successful?
Well, you and I compared our resumes one day, and I have a killer broadcasting resume. Ian's got a killer broadcasting resume, and for broadcasting, hey, I'd get a call, which I did. I got a few calls, but I soon realized that I wasn't getting calls of anything else. And I think it was Ian. I think we talked it out one day about skill set, and maybe we should create a new resume just on your skill set. And at the time, I was like, skill set, okay, well, I could answer a phone. I could talk to people. And he's like, no, like seriously, like go through what you have done as skills. Like, what do you think your skills are your most important? So I jotted down, I think, 5 of them, and I condensed my resume from I think 4 or 5 pages down to 2.
Ooh,
Um,
significant.
and I also put in a couple of things that I had never included because I had done some volunteer work many years ago, but I just never really thought that would be important. But I included it now on this new resume, and so when I got the opportunity, so I got hired for the census by Statistics Canada, um, and when I was hired, the first thing I was told was, you were chosen because of your skill set. And that blew me away. I was like, wow, okay. And it was like, everything hit our box. Like it was bing, 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 bing. You did it all. You were exactly who we're looking for our team. And right then and there, I was like a convert because I had never really thought in that frame of mind before for resumes. And I quickly realized we take our skill set for granted. Just like we take walking for granted, we take our skill sets for our 25, 30-year careers for granted. And I will never do that again either. And I have a whole new appreciation now of when I apply for the next job and the next job and the next job after that, of what exactly are they looking for. But I also think, Stephen, too, research is a huge part of this. I don't think people research enough. They just apply. And in some cases, that's fine. But in a lot of cases, I think it's completely and utterly lazy that they don't. You said networking. Pick up a phone. Talk to somebody who's worked there. What's the work like? What is your quality of life going to be like? All these things. I have realized that that's important because I realize I need a work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
I was a workaholic. I know some of my relationships, I think, crumbled because of that. Some of it was legitimate. Some of it, I don't think, it was my job. I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized the older I'm getting, I want a work-life balance. I want to enjoy my downtime. I don't necessarily want to worry about the next day. I just want to end my day. And so that's what I've been researching, do these jobs give me a good work-life balance? And you got to swallow your pride. You know, look, we've all said we have been professionals, and we have been at the very height of our success, of our careers. We've reached that peak. You got to swallow your pride a little bit. Yeah, I'm starting at the bottom again, and I'm hoping to work my way up because I've done it once before. Why can't I do it again? And some people, they may not have the patience to do that. I do, because as long as I'm happy, that's all I care about. And if that makes me happy, I don't need to make a ton of money. And the beautiful thing with Halifax, and please don't all move here at once. No, but it is true. Like there's a different vibe here. There's a different lifestyle here from what I was used to in Toronto. It just is. And I can live in this lifestyle, and I love this lifestyle. And I don't need a lot of money to be happy. Like that's just me. But I'm very lucky. Lucky in the sense of, I don't have the pressures that a lot of people do have because yes, they have concerns about their family. How are you going to feed them and all? I don't have that. So I also, I sympathize with those that are struggling because, I have met and dealt with a lot of people who have because of COVID and what have you. And, it's tough out there, and I do sympathize. But yeah, sometimes you got to swallow your pride and have confidence in yourself. I that's the one thing I've really, I realized that I have this confidence. My confidence is back that, what, I can do anything I want to do.
There's one thing I'm actually going to jump back and reference because you referenced it earlier, which I think is incredibly important. Well, actually, two things. One is to surround yourself with good people. And when I say good, I don't just mean good in terms that they're nice to you. You're going to need a few people in that circle who are going to put their foot in the backside when you need it from time to time. So they're not yes people. They're not just going to say yes or say things to placate you. It's going to be, you really need to get off your duff and, do something, So I think those are the two things you've referenced. It's been a theme throughout from your rehab, through both of your job losses. Is just having, whether it's friends and family, whether it's family, whatever your situation is, it's getting the right people around you. And again, it's people who will tell you the truth, people who will, they're not just going to say things to play you, but they will give you some honest truth, give you some constructive criticism, and let you know when, yeah, you're dragging your ass, you need to sort of, you need to pick it up. So those are things that came through very clearly from your conversation, but I just wanted to make sure that we pulled those strings out and tied them off in a nice little bow.
Absolutely, Stephen. I truly believe, like I say this all the time. If it wasn't for people like Ian, I don't know where I'd be today, and I mean that sincerely because, we would talk about our victories, we would talk about our defeats, we would just get it out, and I tell you, every time I had a conversation with Ian, I felt better, even if it was bad, tough stuff. Like I just felt good that it was out. And a lot of the time we joke all the time, he's feeling the exact same way I'm feeling, even in our new roles, we were going through the same growing pains together. It was sort of funny how it, every call, it was like, well, I'm dealing with this. Oh, so am I, again, we're not alone. And that's why I go back to corporate healing, back into that forum, each meeting is like this, where we all share our successes and we share our failures and our struggles, and we help each other, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'll say this: pick up the phone. You talk about networking, just pick up the phone and talk to somebody. If you're having a real bad day, pick up the phone. Just get it out. Again, you may not like what's coming back at you, but I think you'll feel better just to get it out. Because I think too many people keep it in. And I also think, and I've seen it with friends of mine, they can't get closure. They won't allow themselves to get closure. I wish they would, because I think they'd be happier. But I think by talking and getting it out, and just get past it. Just look ahead. Stop looking back.
Yes.
It's so easy to look back, and I catch myself sometimes. I do, more in my personal life than I do in my professional life. But yeah, like I just look ahead now, and I'm excited about what's going to happen.
Shawn, I want to thank you so much for being so open, poignant, and thank you for showing me some love. I do appreciate it. Not expected at all. It's actually a surprise in the interview, but I do appreciate it, and I thank you because you've helped me. You've helped me develop. You've helped me in my downtimes. I mean, and you need to find that partner. You need to find that the group is great and group support is awesome, but you do need to find that buddy. You need to find that support buddy.
And I also agree, Ian. You really do know who your friends are, your true friends.
Oh yeah.
When you go through adversity, I will. I learned that through my accident. I learned that through my first time I lost my job, and now I'm learning it through this next sort of path that I'm on. You truly cherish those friendships, the good ones, the real good ones, and yeah, you may have to make the difficult decision to discard some people out of your life. It's not easy, but I'm all about the positivity and moving forward and picking yourself up. And when people are dragging you down, you gotta get away from that.
I agree.
You really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks. Great closing, Shawn. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for being on the In Transition podcast. I want to thank you for being so entertaining, Stephen. I want to thank you for being such a great co-host. If anybody's interested in finding out more about corporate healing, you can email me directly at corporatehealingemail@gmail.com. Thanks again, gentlemen. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah.